And this is probably the biggest mistake that I see newbies make is they get a deal in contract and they're so worried about losing the deal that they communicate a feeling of being desperate. And nobody wants to give anyone money when you come across even slightly desperate. You always want to focus on what it is that the other person wants. And you always have to have the mindset that you don't care at all if they say no. Welcome to the Ryan Rice Show, where we talk about what we learned yesterday that we can apply today so that we can be better tomorrow. I hope you enjoy and subscribe. I went on a play date last weekend with my daughters, and in 10 short minutes, I built a new private money funnel. And I wanted to make this because I see many people in my real estate communities both struggling to raise private money and some of them even complaining about not being able to raise it. And so I'm going to get a little bit more tactical on the skill of influencing others to give you hundreds of thousands of dollars for your real estate deals. Who am I? My name is Ryan Rice. I am a full time real estate investor in my fourth year full time. I've raised, I would estimate, somewhere in the $2 million range of private money. And I would define private money as money from individuals just like you and I. And I'll share as much as I can with you so that you can also raise private money for your real estate deals. First, and most importantly, raising other people's money for your real estate deals is a very big deal. And if there is any ounce of probability, any chance that if and when a project goes south, you have no intention of working your absolute ass off to ensure that your lender is paid back, then ethically, you shouldn't raise private money. And I have unfortunately seen and heard of many horror stories in the real estate communities that I'm in where investors have given someone money who's flipping houses. The project or projects have gone south, and the person they gave money to is ghosting their investor for weeks, for months. As a result, they're getting sued, and it just becomes a big mess. And using other people's money to fund your real estate deals is a incredibly big deal. And part of raising it is those who are interested in investing need to believe beyond a shadow of a doubt that if something were to go wrong, you'll find a way to return their capital. And if they don't, you may be able to raise some money, but people are going to sense that you're kind of a slimy dirtball, or maybe you are not truly invested and you don't understand the serious impact of accepting other people's money to fund your real estate deals. And that will impact your ability to raise money. And so if you're in that camp, first, before you raise any money, become a better person, work on your character a little bit, and then use these tactics. These tactics work, I promise you, and it's important that you use them ethically. All right, now that we got that out of the way, and I know that all of you will return all of the money that your investors give you, I want to tell you exactly how the conversation went at the play date that I mentioned. And I think this will give you an idea of some of the tactics that I use to raise private money, and I'll share them with you. This is my first time meeting and talking with this parent, and we started from scratch in our conversation, right? I learned that both her and her husband were doctors. They had two kids around my daughter's ages. And she shared that during the day, they send their kids to a long summer camp. The timing of this recording is happening during the summer, so the kids are not in school. And the reason that they send their kids to a long summer camp during the week is because both of them are working. They're busy doctors. And even on weekends, sometimes both of them need to work, or maybe they get called in because they're important doctors. And hearing these two things was the first time the private money radar detector in my brain started buzzing, right? They're both high income earners. They're both very busy. And they have kids that they want to spend their time with when they're not working. All right. So when they do have free time, they want to ensure that they spend it with their kids. And so the likelihood of them having excess cash is higher than normal in this situation, or I would say higher than average. So after about 15 minutes of getting to know one another on a more personal level, she asked me what I did for a living. All right. The conversation always gravitates toward that question. So what do you do? And I said something to the effect of, I run a real estate investment business, or I buy real estate. And a quick side note here, sometimes when people ask me that question, I'll answer with something that is going to, put out some additional breadcrumbs. Like, yeah, I'm in real estate. And then I also help everyday people like you and I earn some money with extra cash that they might have through real estate. And then I'll just be silent. But in this case, I purposefully didn't do that because I made a bet. And I did this kind of all very quickly, right? And I read the situation appropriately, but I made a bet that since they were both high income earners with no extra time on their hands, that they would be kind of intrigued with what it was that I was doing. And the bet that I made turned out to be right. When I told her what I did, I saw her entire demeanor switched to a more interested and serious vibe, right? And she was super friendly from the outset. So it's not like she wasn't, interested in our conversation, but I could tell once I started talking about this topic, there was some serious interest. I read the nonverbal cues that I picked up on. So she kind of leaned in a little bit and her brows raised a bit. And she said something like, "Oh, really? Like you flip them? Or what is it that you do?" And I told her what I did. And then she asked, "Well, how do you finance them?" And I thought to myself, bingo. I saw the likelihood of this being raised from about a mile away. And it turned out that I was right. And so I told her 100% of my last 15 projects or so were funded from people just like her and I. And now all of my deals are funded 100% through private money. Right. And so she asked, "Well, how do people feel comfortable giving you their money? Like, how is it safe, or how is it a secure investment?" And she was genuinely curious, right? I could tell that it was from a more curious point of view rather than a condemning or a point of view and that was conveying doubt. And I told her how all of my private lenders get first position lien on the property, just like the mortgage. It's on our personal home. We actually, before this, we were chatting about our personal home for a little bit. And I could tell that she was instantly intrigued, right? So she then proceeded to tell me about her and her husband and how they had been investing in a fund like Fundrise, which, for those of you who don't know what Fundrise is, and it wasn't Fundrise, it was another fund, but I forget the name of the fund. But Fundrise is a bigger company. And if you're an accredited investor, you can invest, I think as little as 20 to 25 grand in bigger apartment deals, or maybe even a group of single family homes, and you get some upside to real estate, right? Um, and I was familiar with what Fundrise was. And I asked her, "So what kind of returns are you getting? Is it like in the 6 to 8% range?" And she confirmed that it was in that range. And then she asked what kind of returns I was paying my investors. And I told her, it depends on the project and investor, but typically somewhere in the 10 to 15% range. And that's pretty much it, right? The funnel was built. That I threw out the hooks and I didn't even really have to put out that much bait, but I could tell that it was kind of the ideal scenario for raising private money. And I don't pretend to announce that she's committed to giving me a whole bunch of money in the future, but I built a funnel, right? That's the first step of the funnel. That's the exact conversation that I have over and over and over. And some are easier than others. And this one was a little bit more hand fed due to the situation. But that's how I continue to build my private money funnels. And there are a few key principles I used in that interaction that I want to bring to the surface with you so that you can tactically use these principles to build a massive private money funnel. Real quick, as you guys know, I just recently started this podcast. If you could give it a rating with a quick tap of the thumb, that would mean the world to me. And even more importantly, it could help spread the word to a broader audience, which in turn could help change a life. Thank you so much, and let's get back to this. So the first thing to touch on, and you guys picked up on this, my radar is always on, right? I'm always listening. I'm always observing for good candidates who might be interested because they are literally everywhere. And just like you always hear about the person who buys a red convertible, and then that person sees a million other red convertibles on the road, right? As soon as you start looking for other private money investors, you realize that they are literally everywhere, even if you have to create them. You just have to constantly have your radar on and constantly seek them out. The second principle when raising private money, even in the beginning, earlier in my career, I never focused on or communicated about what it was that I needed. And this is probably the biggest mistake that I see newbies make is they get a deal in contract and they're so worried about losing the deal that they communicate a feeling of being desperate. And nobody wants to give anyone money when you come across even slightly desperate. You always want to focus on what it is that the other person wants. And you always have to have the mindset that you don't care at all if they say no. Because if you truly don't care, you're going to come across like you don't need them, which in and of itself is going to be a good influence tactic. And so you always think about what the other person wants and how it would benefit them, right? So if you have a deal, you go to your lead funnel and you say something like, hey, I have this great opportunity to make some extra cash. If you're interested, let me know. If you're not, no worries. Or if you know someone who might be interested, let me know. Right. But what you never say is, hey, I need gap funds. Please call me if you're interested. Right. Nobody cares what you need. And nobody is interested when you say that. Right. You have to talk to people in terms of what it is that they want, not what it is that you want. The third principle is you want to purposefully build curiosity in the conversation. This helps create a desire to know more and a desire to get into the real estate game. How many people do you know that are interested in getting into real estate? This is a perfect way to generate some of that excitement, to build curiosity. And you can even generate it high enough to where you create this sense of FOMO, right? You can do it strategically in a way that has the ability to create a fear of missing out from the other person. And building curiosity and generating increased interest is exactly what I did in that playdate conversation, right? I connected the dots that her and her husband were high income earners and that time was probably a commodity that was tough to come by for them, which means they're not going to be running side hustles and they probably have some extra cash that they want to put to work because everyone has the problem when you have extra cash of not knowing what to do with it. And so I planted these little seeds along the way throughout the conversation. And those seeds that I planted continued to elevate her interest, right? So whether it was, yeah, I run a real estate investing business, or I buy the homes with money from people just like you and me, or hey, what is Fundrise paying you? Is it about 6 to 8%? You know, stuff like, yeah, each deal is backed by a secured mortgage, just like your personal home. My last 15 deals were financed 100% with private money, right? That creates some social proof. So each of these statements were very meticulous and were inserted at the appropriate time to generate more and more curiosity and more interest. And a side note, if you don't have a bunch of expertise, you can start small and generate interest with as little as 20 to 25 grand. And you could raise that money in the form of gap funds. So instead of funding an entire deal with private money, you can use hard money, which is more institutional, and then you can fund the gap with a second position lien. The fourth principle is you give people somewhere to go to see what I would call your quote pitch deck, right? Show them what it is that you're doing and give them even more social proof. We've talked about that already. And for me, what I use for this is Instagram. I'm constantly posting about projects. I have a bunch of previous posts on my Instagram where I can send private money leads to there. If they're interested, I can say, hey, go check out my Instagram. I post a little bit about real estate there. You can get an idea of what it is that I do. And so they can go to my Instagram, they can scroll through, see a bunch of before and afters. And I also talk in these before and after posts about how I'm making my private investors money. Right. Sometimes I'll just put out there how much money I made the private investor, or I'm always saying something about private money. So I'm generating that interest when new people go check out those posts. And, you can do this even if you're new, right? So even if you're new, you can just post about looking for deals. You can post about the deals that you're making offers on. You can post when you're walking deals. If you can get pictures from your contractor when your contractor is walking deals and just post about that. You can post about underwriting deals. If you just generally post about real estate, people will have something to go look at so they can see for themselves what it is that you're doing. And so that you have a quote pitch deck to send someone to when you generate some interest. So, very simple, but I just wanted to get a little bit tactical. And to recap, and I'll use the Charlie Mungerism here and the law of inverse thinking. This is everything you would do if you wanted to ensure you would always have an incredibly difficult time raising private money. Or here's everything you would do if you never wanted to raise private money. The first thing is you would never consciously look for people who might be interested. You wouldn't pay attention. And even when you came across high income earners, you assume they wouldn't be interested, or you just don't even think about bringing it up. And so if you do literally the exact opposite of that, you're going to increase your chances, right? So you always need to have your private money radar on. The second thing that you would do if you would never want to raise private money is when you do talk about it, you sound incredibly desperate. You always focus on what it is that you want because you know that if you don't get their money, you'll lose the deal. And you're so scared of that happening because you must make sure that you don't lose out on this deal. Well, what would the opposite of that be? You want to always talk and always think from the perspective of what the other person wants. Nobody gives a shit what it is that you want or what it is that you need. So never say things like, please let me know if you're interested. It just comes across very desperate. The third thing that you would do if you never want to raise private money is when you're in a conversation, you wouldn't be aware at all of how interested the other person might be. You would put zero effort into generating curiosity, and you would drop no breadcrumbs to try and get them more and more interested. Well, what is the literal opposite of that? You would always be aware and you would pick up on those little breadcrumbs that they drop, and then you would continue to drop more so that they keep following you into the conversation. Right. And then when you sense interest, you continue to drop those breadcrumbs in a way that builds more and more curiosity, more and more excitement, which likely will even lead to a little bit of fear of missing out, a little bit of FOMO. And the fourth thing you would do if you never want to raise private money, never tell anybody about what it is that you're doing. Don't put out anything that you're doing publicly for anyone to see. Be scared of everyone's judgment of you because, Sally from high school, if she sees that you're posting about real estate, she might think a certain way about you. Well, what is the exact opposite of this? Tell literally everyone what it is that you're doing. Have somewhere people can go, have somewhere you can send people as well to see what it is that you're doing and validate that what it is that you're telling them is accurate. So if you do these things consistently, you're going to be well on your way to building a good private money funnel. And it's not difficult. It just requires some intentional effort on your part. And if some of these tactics are a little new to you, this is the skill of influence. And so if what I'm saying is generating this feeling of, man, I need to get a little bit better at the skill of influence, go pick up Robert Cialdini's book, which is called Influence. It's probably one of the better books that I've ever read on very tactical and very psychological ways to influence people. And another really good book, honestly, is just the classic How to Win Friends and Influence People. Very good on how to ensure that you learn how to influence the people around you. So I hope that's helpful. I hope that makes you a little bit of money or gives you a little bit of ability to raise some private money. And I hope that makes some strangers some money through you. And I appreciate you guys. Keep killing it. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.